Justin. It's Justin's birthday today. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Justin. Happy birthday to you. Yeah, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for making a great movie.
All right, so I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and then I think
Sure.
we can open it up to the audience. We have a bit of time here. Not too much, but enough to have a little chat. I guess first off, I just wanted to ask, I guess you can let us know sort of about how Octavio came to be.
He said, how did Octavio come to be?
Yeah.
I've got the louder mic. I'm the microphone personality here. So I just want to, I've got some really wonderful friends here in this fourth row here, and my dad and my stepmom are here, my sister, Marina, Glenn, Linda, Craig, Eddie, Jean. And this is my hometown, so it really means a lot to me to be here. And it's kind of cool because Marina, like believe it or not, it's kind of, I thought I was making a very straightforward mainstream picture, but apparently it's quite curvy. The genesis of the story was sprung from reality, even though it seems quite otherworldly. It's very much, what happened was so Marina, who's sitting in the fourth row there, in the red sweater, her sister Amalia, she was living there for this long story. They're originally from England. Their mom moved here. They moved here. Actually, no. Your mom was a young woman who lived here and met a couple of expats from other countries, went back to England, had her kids. Her kids both moved here as adults without their mom. So anyway, Amalia ends up going back to England. Are you following me still? And she at that time, I was traveling by myself through Europe, and I didn't have a lot of cash, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to, I need a place to stay. And she's like, well, my dad just passed away, and I have the key to his attico in Barcelona. You're welcome to stay there. And I was like, yes. And so I went there with this crazy key. It looked like a key that would open a castle up. And I traveled there in the heat of summer and ended up going, through a very circuitous labyrinth and finally finding this place. It was a very, very old place and tiny little elevator. And went in there, and just immediately, as soon as I walked in, there was like a big feeling of like hot air on all over me. And I walked into the place, and just like the movie, this is actually a documentary that you watched. I walked into his socks that looked like they were just freshly rolled off feet. And I'm Chinese, and the sort of supernatural realm and ghosts are pretty much second nature to us. It's like you give offerings to the dead. My mom was constantly convening with people to speak with the dead, etc., etc. So it's very natural. And so I felt when I walked in there, I was just like, I just explained, I'm Amalia's friend. I'm staying here because it's inexpensive. Because you could imagine if you're a ghost and a stranger walks in, you're like, what the get out of my house. So it was quite darn spooky though. Even though I say, hey, ghost no problem, it was darn spooky to be in there. And kind of like all these poltergeist things happened, the flooding happened, and the angry neighbor, that all happened. And so I was quite, and even his portrait, I think that's why I can just really remember, normally I do comedies, but I was pushed after this experience with this ghost to tell a story that was more atmospheric and evocative. And so anyway, I ended up lying down and waking up and seeing his painted portrait, right there. And it was at first quite scary because I could feel a great deal of hostility towards me. But then I just kind of stayed. I almost left to go to a hostel instead because it was so scary. But then it was scarier being at the hostel because there was all these partying people. It was like going back to stay with the ghost. And I stayed with him, and I could feel gradually he would be not so mad at me being there. And I started to snoop around and stuff. And then I came across this lovingly rendered sort of altar to Rivers, Phoenix, and Matt Dillon from the 80s. And I decided to style myself after Matt Dillon. And I cut my hair and I just essentially transformed into Matt Dillon and walked around Barcelona because I could feel that he was trapped in there and I could leave. So I ended up, in my mind, thinking I was going to make a deal with, his name is John Ferrate, the poet, that I would go out and sort of go into Barcelona and try to explore for myself. And I tried to find gay Barcelona myself, but I would just always get lost. And it would just like be a sad case of me wandering through the industrial zone. But it was still very exciting, and I'd like go back and talk to him. And I felt gradually he endeared to me. And then when it came time for me to leave, very unusual, all the electricity went off in the building. And it was very hard for me to leave. It was like the elevator wouldn't work, nothing would work. I couldn't get out of the front door. But eventually I did finally get out of there. So I don't think he wanted me to leave after a while. And then I went to Location Scout a couple years later because I had written this and I was going to shoot it in Barcelona. And I was on a very, very busy subway. And one seat came available and I sat down, and the person sitting across from me was reading a book, and on the back of the book there was Joan Ferrate's face staring back at me. And I was like, is this a very popular book? He was like, no, there's only been a couple hundred copies pressed. I just got it from the reference library. And it was like, he was almost like saying, hey, welcome back. How's it going, friend? So yeah, so that was sort of the impetus, and so it was so vivid in my head, but then I began to think about how to fictionalize the story, and of course it couldn't be, I didn't want it to be the friend of the friend, but I thought, what would it be to be, you know, if you never knew your biological father, and what that drive would be to be curious about him, and then also an array of questions around intimacy and relationships that I'm still terribly, terribly confounded by. I wish I could say that I feel more settled and more, you know, understanding of these weird relationships and gender and sexuality, and I'm still deeply confused. That was a long answer. I think that's a whole 15
great
minutes.
answer. Thank you. We can listen to you talk for the next while if you want to keep going. Great. When I first saw this, I never in a million years would have thought that it was based on a real experience. But that's sweet to hear. Can you talk a little bit about Sarah Gadon's role in the film? I know she's also a producer as well as the lead fellow Canadian film darling.
She's awesome. So Sarah read the script and she contacted me and she's like, get over to my place now, I really need to do this. And so yeah, she just really, it resonated with her. Sarah is a person who's very, very, she's often cast as a very sort of, you know, because of her looks, very beautiful, very, you know, sort of almost like a...
High femme.
What was that?
High femme.
High femme, total high
Always,
femme,
yeah.
porcelain femme, blonde femme.
Yeah.
And she herself is very quite a lot of masculine energy that she, I think admittedly, just sort of plays into the sort of certain kind of feminine gender role when she's professional, but when you meet her, you know, you're like, oh, like I went to her place and it was like, whoa, you're kind of, got a lot of guy energy. She had like pizza boxes on the floor and no knickknacks at all. Nothing. It was just like, whoa, this is a dude's place. And so I think there was something very something in the script that very resonated for her. She wanted to sort of play around with that and see what she could do. It was quite terrifying for her, but she just jumped into it, and she did an amazing job.
Sweet, yeah, she was really dope. I noticed as well, you had a little hand in the score.
Yes, I did. Yeah. The score is a really big part of it.
It's a brilliant score, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
When I first watched it, that was the main thing that I couldn't stop thinking about was the music.
Garage band, people. All recorded on Garage Band. It was myself and Adam Litovitz and Alia O'Brien from the band Blood Ceremony. We're all very close. We live in Kensington Market, and there's a big community there. And Alia, I love her so much. She's like a doom metal goddess and also a PhD candidate. Just has total composer chops like crazy. And so we sat down, and I told her some touchstones. Like, I really love movies that have a very strong score, that kind of have another character in the sound quality. Because so much of it is silence. Like in the first act, somebody pointed out, this is really weird, that there's like a 10-minute stretch where there's no talking. So, music plays a big part. Although we scored that empty space, and then my producers, who are very art-minded producers from the film farm, they're like, why are you scoring through this silence? They're like, make it awkward, make it really quiet. So I was like, okay, out. I was surprised, because that's kind of awesome to have a producer to encourage you to make a challenging choice. But yeah, the three of us just got together, and it was Alia did the more composerly stuff, and Adam and I we call what we do sort of dirt and bone sounds, so it's very raw. And so the two of them really complemented it. So yeah, I really loved making that score.
Yeah, it was sweet. I think we have some time for some audience questions. Kimberly, do you got a mic there? Sweet. Does anybody have a question here for Sook-Yin?
Oh, and it's all SoundCloud and everything like that. So you could probably get access to it for free.
Great. I have I don't know about you, but I can't see too well. These lights are really bright. Does anybody have any questions? No?
Yeah,
Oh, right there.
Lee, thanks for the great movie.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. Triple tier. Yeah.
We'll get to you right after that. We're just going to ask this one right here.
Amazing movie. Just like speaking on the score, and I guess more generally the tone, there was that recurring thing where there's this really atmospheric, emotional soundtrack playing, then suddenly just snaps out. And like, could you just speak to kind of what was the idea behind that, and like how that influenced the tone of the movie?
Do you mean like when there's like sort of a hypnotic world created and then?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it kind of recurs there. I don't know. I think there's I don't know. It's like I feel that I get lost in that world sometimes, in the imagination world, and the kind of like that hypnotic space. And then the world comes crashing down, and you're like, stop it! But I feel like so much of that world, that other ethereal place, or the other imagination place, feels very real to me. And I think it is real. It is real. It's so substantial, but so much of the world continues to like chop it out. Like, wake up! Nope, your mind is wandering. So I kind of like, I also like the punctuation, the edit that happens, so you're lost in a place, but then you kind of like have to plug out and enter another world. Like, I feel like we're probably really becoming even more sensitive to that too, because of our technologies. We're really absorbed into all of these sort of other quantum realities, and then suddenly we have to navigate this other one. So it's sort of a constant kind of shift. I also noticed tonight too, there was a lot of people, like a lot of times people say, well, you have a choice. It's like, I had to leave. You had a choice, that was your choice. This notion of choice. I mean, I don't really know what the movie's about. I think it probably is a reflection of my subconscious, but I think there's a kind of weird thing of like, do you have a choice or don't you have a choice? What are these things, these forces that push us? Are they innate? Are they chosen? Are they, it just seems life is very mysterious.
That was a great answer. Just one question here in the second row, Kimberly. Fifth chair. Second row down here. Yeah. And
That's Kimberly. She's also the part of the dream team.
Perfect. I was wondering if you could just talk about the apartment, what went into creating the apartment. There was almost so much to look at that it's almost like I want to go through and pause it and like look in all the corners. There's so much going on. If you'd be able to talk
So amazing.
about that.
So a lot of this was just like DIY style. You know, we found a lot of the locations simply by Googling stuff, Googling rentals and so forth, or going to Hamilton, Ontario and knocking on doors. And one door was called the Walnut, it's not, it had the name Walnut, like the Walnut, I can't remember. I didn't say the Walnut Castle, but it was just like one floor, so it wasn't a castle. But I knocked on there and this woman's like, hello. And I'm like, wow, holy, this is all one floor. There's a lot of great stuff. She was an art person, like studied art. So she had all these books and all this great furniture, really good taste, all old stuff. And I was like, this is really, there's a lot of stuff we could use in here. And then I told her the premise of the movie, and she's like, well, right now my husband is telling me to let you shoot in my house. He's a ghost haunting the front library. He was also a poet. I'm like, what? So like in the credit sequence, you'll see all these ghosts we thank. This movie would not be possible. But yeah, so it was a very old house. She'd never had a shoot in there before. She was so great. She was, I think, quite wealthy. She just like paid to get her place, all of her stuff moved out. She went to visit her kids in the States while we were shooting. And yeah, so in my mind, so I know the place, because it's so vivid in my head of where I stayed. So in Barcelona, a lot of mustards in the apartment of Ferrate. A lot of Mexican minimalist furniture. It seemed like he was a real kind of swinger dude. I got the sense like he was like Mr. Coolio in his youth, because a lot of really cool like horizontal furniture and stuff and like impeccable taste, really gorgeous things. But then now he's an old guy and all that stuff's in disarray. So like stains on this super cool stuff, and just like everything's like a little bit, you know, dusty, very dusty, and the colors, all the crushed oranges and mustards and stuff like that. So it was very vivid in my mind. So I brought that to Elisa Sobe. I actually, yeah, I have like eons of pictures. I have photos of knickknacks and things. I went to a Mexican flea market and took photos and stuff like that. So a big lexicon of visual information. And Elisa, you know, we couldn't afford Mexican minimalist furniture. So she just like interpreted it her own way, and it sort of captured the essence. We kind of went for the same kinds of hues, and you know, between her and I, just sort of, and my friend Cece, who has a store full of wonderful old things, we sort of pooled our stuff together, and you know, put that together. But it's interesting because there's a couple of locations. There's her Walnut Cottage, it was called Walnut Cottage. And then I needed that big expansive exterior, like I needed the dead garden, and I couldn't get it there. So I found it in this kind of really ugly, again, this person was like, you want to shoot in our building? No one's ever wanted to shoot in our building. In Hamilton, Ontario, is like a very tall, I went to a real estate thing and saw, oh gee, what's this porch? This big balcony looks fantastic. So there was a nice priest who was the guy who looked after the building, a former priest, and he showed me upstairs, and there was this jacuzzi area that's like the common space that nobody uses that goes out into this balcony, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So we had to kind of make it look like it was one place, try to marry. It was really kind of a puzzle to figure out how the doors would work, what we would have to block off, how we could make it kind of seem like it was all one thing, but I think we kind of did it.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the time we have. We have another screening coming up. Everyone give another round of applause for
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. Thanks to my family and my friends for being here. I think this is the best festival. Again, so much fun dancing. Last night, we were dancing under the stars. And very good taste and sophistication and like super good conversations, good parties. So yeah, thank you for having me.
If you're staying for The Year I Lost My Mind, you're welcome to stay within the cinema, and some of our volunteers will come by and grab your entry ticket. But if not, have a great evening. Thank you for coming to Octavio's Day.
Oh, sweet.